This is option 2, sport and physical activity in Australian society. And we're kicking off key idea 2, where it looks at what is the relationship between sport and national and cultural identity. And a couple of these pictures on the slide here are to try and help prompt you that just how important sport is to Australians. And also we'll talk about later how politics has got involved in sport as well. So for this particular recording, we're focusing on the left-hand side of the syllabus here, the student learn to, and there's 3 dash points that we're going to be having a look at. National and regional identity through sporting achievements, and one of Australia's most famous examples is Cathy Freeman at the 2000 Sydney Olympics. We'll have a look at what priority the government puts on sport with the amount of funding that they give sport through the Institute of Sport. And at the last Olympics, Australia's medal tally was about nine gold medals, I think it was, and that worked out at about $16 million per gold medal. So that's a lot of money for what I think is little reward. And finally, we'll have a look at politics and sport. And there's a bit of a shot there of an ex-Prime Minister, John Howard, who was a bit of a sports tragic. And we'll have a look at this whole theme of should politics and sport, in fact, ever meet. So right from the birth of Australia as a nation, sport has been incredibly important to us as a country. In fact, some people would say that it has helped shape who Australia is as a country. Success in sport in this country has in fact become part of the nation's identity, whether it be Ashes victories against England right from the start of our birth of our country. Unfortunately, they haven't been too frequent of late. Probably one of Australia's more famous sporting achievements was the 1983 America's Cup, where we beat America after they had held that trophy for over 200 years. And the example I talked about before, Cathy Freeman's win at the 2000 Olympics, unified a nation and helped draw Indigenous Australians and non-Indigenous Australians closer together. Now, as a nation, we love to identify with our sporting success, and there is a number of ways we do that. The picture on the right there shows supporters dressing up in the nation's colours, while the photo on the left is an example of a ticker tape parade after a successful team returns to the country, and we like to join with them in celebrating their success. Many will argue that the nation's obsession with sport is not a positive thing, and that it's come at the expense of having a focus on arts and academics. So the argument here would be that if the nation is investing so heavily in sport and our focus is so much on sport, that other key elements such as performing arts and education are being neglected in this country, and there's probably some justification in that argument. Now, the same obsession we have as a nation in national sporting achievements also happens at a regional level. So whether it's New South Wales playing Queensland in state of origin, where once again the fans like to identify with the region that they come from. So in this photo's case, it's New South Wales supporters all dressing in blue. We like to have that common theme of defeating the arch enemy, which in New South Wales' case is Queensland. Now, it also happens at a more minor regional level where fans identify with their local sporting team. So whether it be Collingwood in the AFL, the black and white supporters there, or the St George Dragons in the NRL, fans like to unite with their local team and especially celebrate success against their rivals, which in the Dragons' case would be the Cronulla Sharks. Towns also like to identify with their sporting stars. Now, probably Australia's most famous sportsman, Sir Donald Bradman, he was born in the New South Wales country town of Bowral, and that town has built a museum in his honour and in fact is now a leading tourist attraction in this state. Now, the next dash point is government funding. Now, because Australia is a nation that is so obsessed with sport and it's become part of our identity, the government has worked out that it is politically popular to invest heavily in sport. And one of the ways it invests heavily in sport is through government funding in the AIS. Now, the AIS is an elite sporting program that pumps a lot of money into trying to help Australia become more successful in sport, and particularly with a particular emphasis on trying to win medals at the Olympics. Now, this all resulted from the Olympics that happened in Montreal, in the city of Montreal, Canada in 1976, Here is the top 10 medal tally from those Olympics, and as you can see that Australia is not represented on that tally. You have to actually go down to 32nd position to see where Australia finished in those games with just 1 silver medal and 4 bronze. And if you have a look at some of the countries who finished around Australia at that time, Iran and Mongolia, you will see that we were right down the bottom in terms of success in sport. Now, Australian people as a whole were not happy with that, and they encouraged the federal government, I guess, to invest heavily in sport, and the AIS was as a result of this poor performance at the Montreal Olympics. So let's see what happened as a result of fast forwarding a couple of decades to the AIS. This is the medal tally at the Sydney Olympics, and you can see here Australia has shifted from 32nd position up to 4th with 16 gold medals at the Sydney Olympics, and we're against much larger nations such as Germany and China. So that was great success and probably government vindication that the AIS is actually a successful program. At the most recent Olympics in London, Australia won just 7 gold medals. Now, the total cost of the AIS each year works out at about $180 million. Now, that's a lot of money to spend on elite sport, and that worked out at $16 million per gold medal. And you could probably ask in some critical thinking there, is that actually worthwhile? Is that a good spend of the nation's money? People would argue again, who aren't so focused on sport, that that money would be far better spent on education and on health. Finally, the last dash point on this dot point in the syllabus is politics and sport. Now, if you've ever been to a sporting event and you've seen a Prime Minister present a trophy at the end of the game, you'll see just the crowd's reaction is that they don't actually like in this country politics and sport meeting. The Prime Minister, if they do present a trophy, will be roundly booed at every sporting event. Despite this being the case, sport has been used by politicians throughout history to achieve political gain, and in some instances, sport has been very powerful in achieving some very good things in the political landscape. Some examples of this was the apartheid system in South Africa. Now, if you don't know much about apartheid, it was the white suppression of the blacks in South Africa. The whites ruled with violence at that time in the country, and the blacks were pretty much a persecuted race. The Australian Prime Minister at the time, Bob Hawke, realised that just like Australia, sport is very important in the country of South Africa, and he initiated a boycott of all sport against South Africa. This ultimately was very successful, and it played some part in South Africa gradually tearing down their apartheid policy, where to the point today is that it's actually blacks, the blacks who are actually leading that country in government. So some people would argue that in this instance, sport was very successful in achieving a very good political outcome. Another famous case where politics was used in sport was used for political gain was at the 1980 Moscow Olympics. At this time, Russia was at war with the country of Afghanistan, and led by America, they boycotted the Olympics at that time and put some pressure on Australia to do likewise. Now, Australia didn't boycott completely. They left it up to individual sports to decide. So in this case, some sports decided not to attend the Olympics while others did attend. And in some cases, athletes individually decided not to attend due to the pressure that was put on them from the government. Now, at this very time, there's a lot of media attention going on about what's happening in Russia with the Winter Olympics that they're about to stage in the next few months. Now, Russia has some pretty strong anti-gay laws in that country, which doesn't sit very well on the West. And there are a number of people who are actually urging several countries to boycott the Olympics. So when it comes to politics and sport, it raises some very good points to think about. And here's what I think are the key points. Is it fair to use athletes for political gain? So what I'm talking about there, is it right for politicians to use athletes to help achieve a political purpose? Now, in a lot of cases, in my opinion, the athletes are used when I don't think it's fair on them, that they are just people going about their lives, training hard to achieve their goals, and then an outside influence, such as a politician, comes along and decides that they're going to use that particular athlete to gain political mileage for the politician. In some instances, it can be argued this is an easy solution for governments using politics and sport, when a far tougher stance would be to use economic sanctions. So that's going to hurt the country economically, and therefore, on a lot of occasions, they decide to use sport to achieve political purposes, political gain.